It's Rob Bauer with Sharp College Football. I'm the econometrician chicken behind BetaRank, an advanced stat system for college football. I also have a little bit of a post-COVID dry cough, which is why you're getting this on Wednesday, and I haven't gotten to it yet. I'm going to try to get through it without hacking too much, and with the aid of a hot tea with some honey in it. Let's cross our fingers. We'll see. Anyway, if this is your first time tuning in, our shtick here is we run through 6 games from this coming weekend for for college football. We look at them from an advanced stats perspective, and we use BetaRank. BetaRank's going to control for, at the very least, opponent and field position. Sometimes it controls for more, and I'll call that out. We also run through some basic quarterback stats, for each game. But we're going to run through each game trying to talk through what opponent, what the teams are good at, what they're not good at, and how that might affect the matchup. I try to set it to 5 minutes a team, and I have a timer. Sometimes I even make it. Sometimes I do not. But I'm excited for this week. I mean, I have it saying, the title here, let's sort out the middle. Like last week, we had some teams. I mean, Alabama and Ohio State kind of, I feel like, needed to put some performance on paper or on tape, showing, that they deserve to be in really the conversation with Georgia. Not that they hadn't played mostly well up to this point, but I think you could argue each of them, Alabama with Texas, and Notre Dame, and Ohio State with Notre Dame, had certainly played down to opponents early on in the season. And this past weekend, they really, put the pedal down, for the most part, not against necessarily amazing competition. But they certainly showed that they, deserve to have some space between them and some of the other teams and be closer to where Georgia is. And I think that's going to continue over the season as we get more data in on those teams. But now we have a bunch of teams, and this is always true. I shouldn't say always. This is generally true in college football, particularly since 2017. The gap between the top teams and the teams that you might say are very good is large. And there's often a larger gap between, say, the third team in college football and the fourth team than there is, say, between the fourth team and the 12th team and sometimes the 15th team. What's interesting coming into this week, I think, is there's a lot of teams that we might put into that sort of range, and that's, you might say, 4 or 5, all the way down through 40 range of teams. And it's going to be interesting to see who's able to sort of, outperform expectations from where we have them, who might miss and hit lower, or who's going to sort of hit the nail on the head. And there's certainly some teams, I think, teams that we're not going to cover in this that our BetaRank is higher on than Vegas. And it might be that we're just lower on their opponent this week, but both teams from Mississippi in the Power 5, Mississippi State and Ole Miss, pretty heavy favorites in the model this week. But we're going to cover a whole bunch of games. This week in particular, I think that are going to really sort of help us sort out. I think we have questions like you might say for Clemson and Michigan. Are they able to really show us that maybe they are deserving, to be in the conversation, where that, maybe they're not, where they're going to be a favorite against somebody like an Alabama, but where they show up and maybe they're just a touchdown underdog and you get a little turnover luck, or the, favorite has an off night and you win. That happens. I'm interested to see if, what do we got? Because Michigan Michigan was one of the teams last week that you could argue had an opportunity and didn't do it against a good Maryland team. And if Maryland had their quarterback, it really might have gone even more down to the wire than it did. Michigan's got another opportunity, I think, this week against unsurprisingly, one side. If I was real fancy, I'd have some major, something to really help me get through this instead of just hot tea with honey in it. I'm sure somebody's going to write in with what their aunt's or grandma's recipe was, which probably works, but. Anyway, Michigan didn't really hit the nail on that. They have another opportunity against a good Iowa defense to show us that they maybe do belong and they're not a heavy favorite in this game against an Iowa team that I don't think anyone thinks is really good this season. So it's not just beta rank. It's also Vegas didn't have them as a heavy favorite in this game on the road. Anyway, I'm excited. Let's jump in and get to the games, because I probably have, like only so much voice before this just turns into just rampant coughing. Like I'm like doing my best Doc Holliday impression from Tombstone. All right, let's hop in and do the games for this week. First game this week, NC State at Clemson. This is an interesting game in a lot of ways. Look, Clemson's offense has been better than they were last season. And there's certainly, last season you could argue was horrendous. So in some ways there's only, you can only go up. But sitting at 32 is a decent number for them, I think, comparatively. Talent level, they certainly need to be in the top 15. Here's an opportunity, though, against Tony Gibson's defense to do that. So Dave Doran's your head coach for NC State. Dabo Swinney is your head coach for Clemson. This Clemson offense has a new OC in Brandon Streeter. As I mentioned, Tony Gibson is your defensive coordinator for NC State. Thus far, what Clemson's been pretty darn good at is a lot of the yards components that make up beta rank, right? Explosive drives, play efficiency, and negative drives. So they've been able to hit big plays at a decent clip. Their play efficiency number is pretty good, and their negative drives number, avoiding 3 and outs, avoiding turnovers, is also pretty solid. Now, what they've been less good at is making sure to turn yards into points, being able to sustain drives. Their drive efficiency number sits at 55 overall. Now, they haven't played the world's hardest slate of defenses up to this point, right? And a lot of people came out, are like pointing at like, are you a believer in, Ukulele after, the game at Wake? And it's like, guys, Wake had a terrible defense last year. And certainly we're hoping that they've improved this season, but Wake ate the measuring stick, folks, of where this offense is. Oh, this is going to be a hoot. Apologies for everyone. I had a really mild case, but I'm stuck with this is like week 2 of like a dry cough that won't go away. Anyway, this, however, should be a pretty good measuring stick. Tony Gibson's one of the best defensive coordinators in the game. This NC State defense, though, has given up more big plays than we would have expected up to this point. Not a great sign coming into this game in particular, I would say, but they have done a pretty good job forcing 3 and outs, negative drives, 3 and outs, and turnovers. And they've been really good at drive efficiency. They absolutely have found ways to get off the field, make sure that they're not giving up points, even if they have given up some yards. They've been better against the pass than they've been against the run. And that, I think, matches up well for what Clemson's going to bring to the table here. Uiagalelei is at 64.3% completion percentage, 8.0 per completion. This should be a significantly better test. I'm excited to see where they shake out in this game. You flip it around and the other side of the ball, this NC State offense is not great. 69 overall. Tim Beck's your offensive coordinator. I'm a little surprised, I have to be honest, that they haven't been a little better offensively. But they've really struggled. They have struggled with drive efficiency. They have not been able to convert drives into points. They struggle with consistency and play calling. They've also significantly struggled putting up big plays up to this point, number 80 in explosive drives. Now they've been decent at their yards per play. This is controlling proponent field position and explosives. But their negative drives number, it's good comparatively at 43, but that's not a great number overall, right? Like you should grade Power 5 teams on a 1 to 65 scale. Obviously Wake's offense at this, or not Wake's, NC State's offense at this point isn't great. Now these numbers here are unweighted, where the overall team numbers are not. They have some projection weight in them still for one more week. So there is some small sample size variance here. I keep saying Wake. NC State has been better throwing the ball than they have been running the ball up to this point. Now you do get a Wes Goodwin led Clemson defense that honestly has been a little worse than you would have expected, giving up points to this point. And they haven't played. This number is going to improve for them. They're going to end up likely as a top 10 defense over the season. Just in the small sample that we've had up to this point, they've kind of struggled at points. They've given up drives and let them get turned into points. They've done a better job containing explosive plays, but they've still given up a few there. Very good at play efficiency, controlling the yards per play. They've just screwed up a little bit. They need to tighten things up. Like, the fundamentals are there, particularly containing the run, but they've been a little more vulnerable against the pass. I mean, and Wake really was able to hang with them. I mean, and Wake's a team, like, they're almost like the flip of Iowa. Like, they're a very good offensive team, but it's very hard to recruit players to Wake that can really put together a very good Power 5 defense. Clemson at this point also needs to up their negative drives number, forcing more 3-and-outs and turnovers. I mean, again, like, a lot of their problem with numbers up to this point is outside of Wake. They haven't played the greatest competition, and they haven't always played great against. And that's one of the things. Like, you want to get a great number, like, you need to show up and play. At Georgia Tech, game was not necessarily the performance you were hoping for from them. It wasn't bad. It was good, but it wasn't great. Anyway. This will be an interesting matchup because you do get Devin Leary in, an experienced quarterback, 64% completion percentage, 7.1 per. Look, if this Tim Beck-led offense is going to have a pulse and going to beat expectations this season, like, they're going to need to show up today, or, for this game in particular. Here we've got it at Clemson as 77% win probability and 8.34 as the spread. Yeah, here's a team. Here's an interesting team. I mean, they're all, I say interesting a lot. Interesting's a really good thing with me. But we get a Texas team led by Steve Sarkisian going up against Neil Brown's West Virginia. Texas sits at number 12. West Virginia's at 32. Offensively, Texas has improved over where they were last season. Now, Texas looked good early on last season and then fell off as the season wore on. They really struggled to keep the passing game going last year in particular. So, like, what looked like is a very promising Texas team offensively, not defensively, offensively last year early, fell off on the back half. I'm expecting them to be able to continue more of it this season. What they've struggled with offensively is drive efficiency. And Sarkisian's your play caller here. Jordan Leslie is your play caller for this West Virginia defense. They've struggled with drive efficiency. They've struggled to maintain drives, put them together to be able to put points up. They've been pretty good at explosive drives, number 17 overall here. Pretty good at play efficiency, and they've avoided turnovers and 3-and-outs for the most part. That number 11 in negative drives is a solid number there. No big run pass split for them. The question coming into this game, of course, is who's going to be at QB. It might be yours. If not, Hudson Card has played pretty serviceably. Look, I mean, they had a horrendous game last week, turnovers and Texas Tech, really pushed their luck and hit on a lot of fourth down conversions in that game. I think this Texas team is still pretty good. This is a game that they need to show up and play again, like play up to the level that we have them for. In particular, viewers is back in. Being able to put the gas down, I think, offensively, because this West Virginia defense has really struggled since Tony Gibson went to NC State. They didn't retain him. They kept on Jordan Leslie, which was a really poor decision because I don't think he's a particularly good defensive coordinator. They're sitting at number 50 overall in drive efficiency. They've definitely let teams put together drives to put up points against them. 81 in explosive drives, too many big plays that they've given up comparatively. 39 in play efficiency, that's a decent number. I should also point out that play efficiency is the least important of the core 4 beta rank metrics. But negative drives, not forcing enough 3-and-outs, not forcing enough turnovers. And you saw, look, they really should have run away more from Virginia Tech in that game that they had with them. But they struggled at times, in particular against the pass against not a very good Virginia Tech had some luck in that game too. West Virginia should have been able to put that game more away than they did. That said, there were definitely times in that game where you really kind of wondered about the pass defense for West Virginia in particular. 89 in effective pass. They're likely going to get a pretty good test in the air in this game. Flip it around. Look, I don't know that this West Virginia offense is going to hang around 15, but I wasn't expecting this Graham Harrell-led offense to kind of sit in this range. And the key to them being able to keep this up, we'll get to because it'll be down below. Number 31 in drive efficiency. They've done a decent job. I mean, a lot of these numbers are decent. Like the 31 in drive efficiency, that's decent for a Power 5 offense, being able to sustain your drives, turn them into points. 27 in explosive drives. They're all right at play efficiency as well. What they really excel at is negative drives. They don't go backwards. They don't turn the ball over. They don't have 3 and outs. Those are all good things. But what's interesting here is, and one of the things that you sort of like, you flip on its head from Harrell's time at USC, was when Harrell was the OC at USC, he called a lot of runs. The problem was they sucked at running the football. So it was really wasted plays that he would obstinately call runs on. They seem to have found a bit of a groove running the football, which means those aren't wasted plays for Harrell the way they were at USC. So his play calling tendencies and his personnel seem to be a little bit of a better match here. And that might allow them to rely a little more on Daniels, not to have to win the games with his arm, but to be able to work off of the running game in particular. They're going to have to execute a little better. JT Daniels is at 64.7% completion, 7.2 per. They get a Texas defense under Pete Kwiatkowski, taking a significant step forward off of where they were last year, switched over to the 4-2-5. I'm pretty excited about where this defense is. That was really, I mean, as bad as the offense fell off in the back half, the defense was bad throughout the season. They're decent at drive efficiency. They could certainly improve there. They've done a very good job, and this is almost a hallmark of a Kwiatkowski defense, is being able to contain big plays. Decent at play efficiency. Where they've struggled, they need to force more 3 and outs and turnovers, like big time. Like up to this point, they have not done enough work there. No big run pass split. I'm excited. Like, this should be a really fun matchup this side of the ball. Texas certainly has an advantage, though, if you remember where the offense versus the defense sat on the prior page. Texas comes in 73% win probability, 7.9 at home. All right. This should be a fun one. Maybe not. Like, truly, in a lot of ways, like, Michigan should be able to just paste Iowa again. And if Michigan does, unlike the game they had last week in Maryland, they're going to jump off of where we got them at 10. Anyway, Jim Harbaugh is your head coach. Kirk Ferentz is your head coach for Iowa. I think both of these units that you're seeing here are underrated versus where they're going to end up for the season. This is a small, like, we have a little bit of a small sample. But offensively, I think Michigan's likely a top 10 unit-ish, and Iowa is also likely a top 10 unit on defense. Offensively, you have a new play caller in for Michigan. It's Matt Weiss is your play caller. They're sitting at 32 in drive efficiency. They need to do a little bit of a better job. Like, now Michigan's problem up to this point is that they're outside of Maryland. Their competition, of course, has just been god awful. And so, oh God. So we've only seen them against one team with a pulse. This will be number 2. So I'm excited to see this Michigan offense against the defense with a pulse and what they're able to do. They're going to need to put up more big plays. They're going to need to put, like, they're going to need to, against, again, a defense that I think will end up being pretty darn good. They need to have fewer turnovers, fewer 3 and outs, cut down on the negative drives. They have a huge run pass split. I mean, this offense is going to line up. They're going to look to run. They're not going to ask JJ McCarthy to necessarily beat you with his arm. That is not going to be their game. Though he is at 80% completion and 11.6 per. That's what happens when you're mostly, like, those are, you're not going to necessarily see those completion numbers from a quarterback at an academy, but, like, if you run the ball like this, like, and your QB can be reasonably accurate, like, you're going to take a bunch of shots down the field and you'll likely find a lot of guys open. I remember years ago, I was at an Arizona-Stanford game when Harbaugh was at Stanford. I've never seen tight ends that open on play action in my life, like 40 yards running down the field, no one on them, right? Like, you can do that when you just physically dominate the line of scrimmage. You get a Phil Parker-led defense. Phil Parker is one of the best defensive coordinators in all of college football. He's largely been carrying Ferentz father and son for the past couple of seasons at Iowa. He's usually puts together top 10 units. I expect this unit to their numbers to improve as the level of competition improves. And this will be a good one for them because they haven't played the world's greatest slate of offenses up to this point. Drive efficiency numbers decent, number 24 at 5 overall. They've done a pretty good job of limiting big plays. Now their yards per play hasn't been great so far. They're going to need to tighten that up on their play efficiency, and they need to force more 3-and-outs and turnovers. Now you may remember last year, Iowa, of course, was just a turnover forcing machine early in the season. They haven't quite carried forward that turnover luck, but more 3-and-outs in particular, I think would help them out, might even help out their moribund offense. Number 39 in effective rush, 30 in effective pass. Again, like this matchup right now in advanced stacks doesn't look all that sexy because we have a small amount of data in for the season. But think of it as like, I really do think for both of these teams, I'd be shocked if they don't finish in the top 15 for both these units. So this actually should be a pretty good matchup that should help us rate where these teams are going to sit over the season. Flip it around. Ooh, buddy. Look, Iowa's offense normally under Ferentz the Younger sits somewhere in the 60s. Last season they fell down into this range. I thought, hey, like Iowa fans, you like on the bright side, they can't be that bad again. In the small sample, they're that bad again. Terrible at drive efficiency, awful at explosive drives, slightly better at yards per play, but negative drives is not a great number. 94 in negative drives, too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. Better running the ball than throwing the ball. Congrats. Spencer Petras is your QB. He's completing 51.1% of his passes, 5.6 per. That's brutal. I mean, in modern college football, if your quarterback's not completing around 65% of your passes, you are likely not sustaining drives at the level you want to. Petras is even lower than that, and he's not exactly like hustling the ball down the field with that 5.6 per. They get a Michigan defense under Jesse Minter, new defensive coordinator, 21 overall in beta rank. They've done a pretty good job at drive efficiency, 20 overall there. They need to do a little better job containing big plays, number 30. They were tested a little bit against a Maryland offense last week. 14 in play efficiency, that's a pretty good number for them. 49 in negative drives. They do need to force more 3-and-outs and turnovers. They're a lot better against the pass than they are against the run so far. They're going to get a little bit more of a test against this Iowa offense that is gonna look to run the ball. I mean, I don't know why you would throw the ball given Petras's numbers and what your passing schemes must look like in modern college football. But you know, like if you want to air it out, knock yourselves out, Iowa. I don't expect them to. They're going to try to run the football. Michigan should be able to clean up a bit of this rush number here in this game. We've got this Michigan on the road, 77% win probability and 7.66. I think this opened at 8 or 9 in Vegas at Circa, so it's not like we were far off here. Michigan needs to prove that they deserve to be ranked a little higher. You should be, if you're a better, like if Ohio State was on the road at Iowa, they'd be a bigger favorite. Michigan needs to show, they need to put something on tape and in the data that they're a better team than they have up to this point. That's my spiel. Play better, you'll be ranked higher. It's always true. Anyway, Oklahoma and TCU. This should be a fun one. Like TCU and James Madison have each played 2 FBS games. Now, like a lot of teams have only played 3. Some teams have played 4. A handful of teams have played 5 FBS games up to this point. TCU's played 2. So TCU is like a full-on finger in the wind at this point. Like they're a very small sample in the data. They get an Oklahoma team. You have, of course, Brent Venables is your new head coach at Oklahoma. Sonny Dykes is your new head coach at TCU. One of the nicest people in college football, Sonny Dykes. Brent Venables, the offense under Jeff Levy. They've been pretty good so far. Number 23 overall in beta rank. Unsurprisingly, I mean, and you should expect, like, this is exactly what you were likely going to get with Levy. Some of, like, a lot of the concepts in the passing came from Kiffin. Levy comes out of the Briles school of, offense. So really explosive. I mean, this Oklahoma offense relies on big plays. They need to clean up their efficiency numbers a bit. 44 in drive efficiency, 19 in explosive drives. That's a solid number. They need that. If you're going to be sitting in the 30s or the 40s in explosive or in drive efficiency, and you want to improve this offensive number, you're going to have to put up a lot more big plays. 26 in play efficiency. Again, a pretty good number here at negative drives, 23 overall. And a big run pass split. They're far better running the football than they are throwing the football right now. That's not overwhelmingly surprising. Like, Dylan Gabriel's been good for the most part, but the competition hasn't been great either up to this point beyond their last game against a pretty decent K-State team. I said decent. I didn't say very good. Pretty decent K-State team. We'll find out more about them. But they get a TCU defense under, I think, what was one of the better hires of the college football season. They got in Joseph Gillespie. I really like that hire in particular that Dykes made. Gillespie came over from Tulsa. He had been for years one of the best group of 5 defensive coordinators going. He gets a defense that was horrible last year. This is what really led to Gary Patterson's ouster last season, was the defense utterly collapsed. Again, small sample size, sitting around 44 in beta rank. Like, if they manage to sit in the top, the 30, like as a middle of the road Power 5 defense after given the way they were last year, that's a decent number for them, to be frank. They've done a decent job in drive efficiency. They're going to, you don't want to let Oklahoma show up and be really consistent against you because they haven't been up to this point. You are going to have to control big plays, 26 in explosive drives. That number bodes well for them coming into this game, I think, in particular. But they've struggled up to this point, forcing 3-and-outs and turnovers. Again, the level of competition. They played Colorado. We've got data on them for Colorado. What looks like a decent SMU team. Not a ton of data on them yet either. And that's it. So they need to force more 3-and-outs and turnovers. They've been better against the run than they have against the pass. And again, that might bode well for them, I think, in this particular matchup. So I already tell you, I gave you Gabriel's numbers, right? 67.2%, 8.9 per. They get a 66.7% and 9.3 per. I'm just wandering all over with my eyes. They get a TCU offense under Garrett Riley. That's Lincoln Riley's little brother. Now look, they sit at 4 in beta rank in the unweighted data. I hesitate. Look, Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley run a pretty fun offensive show, but I don't think they're this good. I think this is a 2-game sample size problem. So we're going to find out a lot about this TCU offense here. I would say, again, if they can finish in the top 30, that's a really solid number for them too. 4 in drive efficiency, 21 in explosive drives. They've played really nobody yet as far as defenses goes. This is going to be their first shot to play a defense with a decent pulse. Again, so a lot of these numbers are these are a bit of a finger in the wind. I've play some more FBS games, guys. Don't take a bye week in the first couple of days or in the first couple of weeks of the season. No big run pass split yet. I am interested because Max Duggan traditionally adds more with his legs than he does with his arm. In the extremely limited level of competition that they have played so far, he's at 77% completion percentage, 11.4 per. They get a Ted Roof-led defense. Ted Roof Venables. Defense that struggled a little bit with drive efficiency. Teams have been able to put together long drives for points on them. They have done a lot better job containing big plays up to this point. Although Adrian Martinez certainly scampers for a few against them. Their play efficiency number has been decent. They need to force more 3-and-outs and turnovers. They've been better against the pass than they have been against the run. That's interesting because I do think Riley came over from App State before he joined forces with Sonny Dykes. And he certainly, Dykes has often looked to hire guys that can bring a run game to what he brings in the passing game. I'm interested to see where Oklahoma's defense shakes out in this game as they continue to learn under Venables and learn his system. We've got this Oklahoma 67% and 4.88 on the road. This is a Friday night game, and this is one of the games I'm really most excited about this week. Which is, I'm part of why I'm having to get this out. Voice be damned. Or cough be damned. Anyway. Washington looks fantastic so far in the early season. Kalen DeBoer is your new head coach. Chip Kelly's your head coach at UCLA. There's 2 things here. One, Washington We have 3 games in for them. I'm really interested to see where this offense fully shakes out. They look terrific so far. They're going to get a UCLA defense. This is their best season that they would have, if this number were to hold, this is their best season in like 5 or 6 years as a defense. So I'm interested to see where this UCLA defense is going to hang here. Anyway, like offensively, Ryan Grubb is your play caller for Washington. They've been pretty good at drive efficiency, number 19 overall. They've been excellent. I mean, again, like very good at explosive drives, putting up big plays. Their yards per play, controlling for opponent field position has been less good. Again, that's not all that important comparatively. Like it matters, but it's better to be good at big plays, like explosive drives. Negative drives, though, fantastic at avoiding 3 and outs and turnovers. Like your only real knock on them so far this season is those 2 goal. I mean, they could have truly blown Michigan State even more out of the water as far as the scoreboard went, not just the yards, if they had converted those 2 goal line the drives that they had into points. Penix has just been fantastic. They have been incredible throwing the ball. Number 3 in effective pass versus 86 in effective rush. I'm interested to see at some point if they have to lean more into the run game, but Penix is just slinging it. So I would let him go in a lot of ways as much as you want. 64.3 completion percentage, 9.7 per. This will be a fun matchup. We're going to get to see UCLA defense, like I said, under Bill McGovern, new defensive coordinator replacing Cherry Azanaro. They've struggled with drive efficiency. Teams have been able to put together long drives to put up points against them. UCLA has played literally frickin' no one up to this point. I mean, South Alabama is their best game they have played. Now, South Alabama is a really well-coached, somewhat competent group of 5 team that if they don't break through this year is probably going to break through next year. But it's still a group of 5 team. And so their number, and they got Colorado last week. So their numbers in controlling big plays and explosive drives are a little suspect. I'm interested to see how they do in particular, and if that number holds up in this game. Number 33 in play efficiency, 17 in negative drives. They've been decent so far at forcing 3 and outs and turnovers. Again, I'm really interested to see how that holds up in this game in particular. But they've been better against the run than they have been against the pass. And oh, buddy, is that not where you want to find yourself against this Washington team. I think a lot of people were really like, they got a Azizi Hearn in, and people were like, oh, he was good at Wyoming, and like I remember Azizi Hearn when he played at Arizona, and he was not good. He clearly did not have the physical tool set to play Power 5 football. We'll get to find out in this game for sure. You flip it around, and the UCLA offense is good. Like Chip Kelly knows what he's doing. I don't know that he's going to put together a great offense, and even his great offenses don't compare to what we've seen for offenses since like 2017. His offenses of the past, but like he can put together a pretty decent offensive number out there. If only he would recruit. He's your offensive play caller here. Number 18 overall. They're decent at drive efficiency. Decent in explosive drives, decent at play efficiency. I mean, nothing really stands out to you here, right? Like they're pretty good at these things, and they're a little bit better than that at negative drives. No big run pass split. That's a little bit interesting because Kelly in the past couple seasons, of course, has relied far more on the run game than he has on the pass. I'm interested to see, part of it is because the level of the competition that they have seen up to this point, and that they have leaned a little bit into the passing game. What's interesting, I think, versus years past is like reliably Chip. I almost called him Chris. I'm on a roll. Chip Kelly, his passing game at UCLA has pretty much been Dorian Thompson-Robinson throwing to a tight end. And they've had some wonderful tight ends that have been fantastic to watch. They've gotten really open. But doesn't appear to be the case this year. And it might be Chase Cota, who honestly isn't. Oh wait, no, he's at Oregon now. Who's their guy? Oh, he transferred from Duke. I'm not going to remember. Anyway, I got a little COVID fog. What can I say? Thompson Robinson's completing 74.8% of his passes, 8.4 per. Again, like this is going to be a significant step up in competition. Now, Washington traditionally, under both Chris Peterson and Jimmy Lake, they were a defense first team, in particular after Jonathan Smith moved on. The defense this season, I'm really interested to see where they shake out. And this is going to be a test for them. They've got a new defensive coordinator in Chuck Morrill. They've really struggled with drive efficiency up to this point, though they've been very good at containing big plays. Their play efficiency hasn't been fantastic, and they haven't forced enough 3-and-outs and turnovers. They've been a lot better against the run than they've been against the pass, but I'm interested to see how this stacks up in this game, because they also haven't played like a murderer's row of offenses up to this point. Michigan State is barely competent offensively. They're going to get a test with this UCLA offense here, and we're going to find out, because this number 7 number for them in effective rush, I'm not sure is going to hold up in this game. Their bugaboo last year was A and B gap runs. You could just pound this team with football. I'm interested to see, because UCLA, I think, will be able to run the football in this game. I don't know that they're going to be able to keep up with Washington over the long haul here, but I think people should hesitate here, because I think UCLA is going to be able to run the ball a bit. Washington is a 55% favorite with win probability and 1.22 in the model. I picked this game in particular because this is like Vegas sees this very differently than Beta Rank, and this might be an interesting game to see. Even if it ends up being that the model was way off, but is still right against the spread. So we get Cincinnati under Luke Fickell, Tulsa under Phil Montgomery. Cincinnati's offense, I don't know that they're going to end up being quite this bad, but they're definitely taking a little bit of a step back from where they were last year. Gino Godolgi is your offensive coordinator. He was also your play caller last season. They're struggling with drive efficiency, struggling with explosive drives. Their play efficiency number hasn't been great. And they've too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. They have really struggled to run the football versus last season. I think in particular, they are really leaning into throwing the football. And that's been an interesting turn for them, I think, versus past seasons. Last year, I do think that they let Desmond Ridder cook more. And I think that offensive choice was a really good one, but they still fundamentally ran the ball. And in years prior to that, now, again, Mike Denbrock was your OC then, they really leaned in much more to running the ball than throwing it. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm just not sure that this offensive switch holds up. Defensively, Tulsa's been pretty decent up to this point. They played Ole Miss tight last week, which is part of why they're sitting in the top 50 currently. Their drive efficiency number, and I should say Luke Olson is their defensive coordinator. They're sitting at 28 overall in Beta Rank. I'm not sure that holds up over the entire season, with Gillespie gone, but they've traditionally, I would not hesitate to say Tulsa probably finishes with the top 50 defense. They've traditionally finished there when Gillespie was there. That's a very good number for a group of 5 team. They've done a good job containing big plays. They're 28 overall in explosive drives. Their play efficiency number is pretty good, 44 overall. They've done a very good job forcing 3-and-outs and turnovers comparatively, number 27 overall there. Now they definitely have a run pass split, but it's the kind you want when you have a matchup like this, right? Like, they're definitely better against the pass. This should be a fun matchup to see. Are they really able to slow down, what is now more of an error-oriented attack from the Bearcats? Ben Bryant's your QB for Cincinnati, 67.2 per or 67.2 completion percentage, 8.9 per. You flip it around to the other side of the football, and this should be an interesting matchup too. Look, despite the fact that Phil Montgomery is also your offensive coordinator and play caller here, and his background is offense, Tulsa has been a defensive first team for the past couple of seasons. They've never really put it together offensively. I got to be honest, it kind of looks like maybe they have this. I'm dying to see this game just for this. Does Tulsa have an offense finally under Montgomery? They're sitting at 25 in drive efficiency. That's a solid number, being able to take drives and turn them into points. 30 in explosive drives. That's a good number. Avoiding, they could clean up this play efficiency a bit. They need to clean up negative drives, too many 3-and-outs, too many turnovers. They have a huge run pass split. They're much more effective throwing the ball than they are running the ball. Davis Brin is expected to play. He missed a couple of plays in that Ole Miss game. He has a 62.9 completion percentage, 10.0 per. They get a Mike Tressel-led Cincinnati defense that's been the calling card. I'm excited to see, Cincinnati to this point, even though they've had Arkansas, they haven't faced, this will be another data point, I think, for them against pretty good competition. Indiana is not. To see where this defense sits, the last couple seasons, they've been right around a top 10 defense, which is fantastic for the group of five. I'm interested. They lost a ton off of that defense from last year. I'm interested to see where they shake out. My expectation is, and they may finish over the season and improve over the season. They're going to finish as a top 25 unit. Do they finish as a top 20 unit? This would be a game to tell us a bit about that. So they're going to be at 28 in drive efficiency. They've done a decent job containing drives, keeping them from turning into points, finding ways to get off the field. They've given up some big plays, though. 56 in explosive drives. They're going to have to watch out for that here. Brin's 10 yards per is staring at them. And Tulsa's also faced Wyoming, who again appears to have a pretty good defense. We'll see. Wyoming's all over the place. Beats Tulsa, had some luck with that. Beats Air Force, shows up and truly beats them, which is a weird one. And they got, blown out a little bit by BYU last weekend. Anyway, play efficiency. They've done a decent job here, and they've done a pretty good job, with negative drives, forcing 3-and-outs, forcing turnovers. No big run pass split. Again, this should be an interesting matchup to see where these teams are. This game opened at Cincinnati by 13. Beta-Rank has this as a toss-up with the home field advantage for Tulsa. I'm not sure. Look, you could talk me into look, we have a small sample size, and these teams are actually going to be quite a bit apart, and Cincinnati may win by 10. I'm not sure it's going to be 13 without some turnover, help from Tulsa or them really showing up and stubbing their toe. Either way, that'll be a really interesting data point that we're going to learn a lot from in this game. Yeah. I made it through without coughing all as I say. I should have knocked on wood. All right. I won't keep you all with me yakety yakking and hacking as we run through the rest, but there should be some really good, I think, even though, you get Rutgers and Ohio State. Alabama might have an interesting game against Arkansas. It'll be an interesting data point if that game's closer than the spread. Beta-Rank had it right around where Vegas had that one as well. Or if somehow Georgia were, to struggle in their game they had. Another interesting one out there to keep an eye on is where LSU sits against a pretty bad Auburn team. Both Beta-Rank and Vegas have that as pretty large spreads. Does LSU live up to that or not? Again, the spreads, whether they be from Beta-Rank, the naive spreads that we put out every Sunday, or the Vegas opening lines that come out later on, are just interesting data points to compare against on how teams do. How do they do versus expectations? If they beat them, then they're better than Vegas, or they're better than Beta-Rank expected. And that's a useful thing to be able to when you want to get an idea where their performance is. Now, of course, always open up the box score and see who won the turnover battle and see who put up more yards and more yards per play in the game as well. But if you want to know where a team's going to often go in the rankings, versus where they were the prior week, you can look how they did versus, the expectation that Vegas had for them. Useful way to benchmark. So I'm excited. This week is going to help us do a lot of shuffling. Next week, there's two big things. One, Beta-Rank is going to be all in-season data. We're dropping the projection. Some of that will be good for teams that have at least 4 games against FBS competition in For TCU, where we will have 3, it will be a little dicier, but not much, right? Like, and I'll take the good with the bad with that. We are releasing FCS rankings. Now, FCS teams have not played a ton of FCS games up to this point. I'm excited to get them out. They are going to be a little bit more of a finger in the wind. There will be some teams that have played 4 games against FBS competition. There's going to be Stonehill College who will have played 1 game. I mean, like, it'll probably get rained out or something like that from weather, but they will have played 1 game against FCS competition. But we're going to roll out FCS rankings next week on the website. That's really exciting. I'm pumped to be able to bring you this. Most of what you see for FCS rankings are pseudo advanced stats that rely on box score type data. This is drive level data, the same level of data that goes into beta rank I get on every FCS game, and that's going to be coming to you. I'm excited to be able to bring this level of advanced stats to FCS football. So obviously check that out. Hopefully next week I will be less grambly. I don't know if grambling, that's not a word, but whatever. Less intermittent coughing. Anyway, you can find all the stats you just saw and a whole lot more at sharpcollegefootball.com. I'm Rob Bower, the econometrician chicken behind Beta Rank, and you can find me at Beta Rank FB or at Sharp College Football. We have a Pac-12 podcast at 12 Pack Radio, and you can find all the back episodes of that at sharpcollegefootball.com/12 Pack Radio. Thank you so much for tuning in. Enjoy all the games this week, and we'll see you soon.